Okay.
So let me say welcome to all colleagues to the third day of this meeting. So we are really happy that we still see the many interest. That's great. So today we are going to discuss the another topics, two topics. The one on the recommended housing topics, and then we will move to the second topic on the content structure design, and the format of the PNR. So for first topic, I would like to invite Mitali Sen, who is the Chief of the Technical Assistant and Capacity Building Branch at the U.S. Census Bureau International Program Center. Mitali, floor is yours.
Thank you, Miriam. So in the housing topics, we have three objectives. Um, First, to discuss the implementation of the housing census topics as recommended in the PNR. Second, assess which core and non-core topics need to be revised in terms of concepts, definitions, and classifications. And third, potential new topics that we can look forward to in the 2030. We have a lot of esteemed discussants in this session. And so without further ado, I would actually invite UNSD's Miriam Demirci to take the floor and present on the feedback that she got from the expert group via the questionnaire that they sent us out. So Miriam, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mitali. Now I will share my presentation. Can you please confirm you can see
We can
in,
see it,
but
but
it's not the presentation mode, right?
it's not in presentation mode as yet. Yes,
Yeah,
now it is on.
okay. All right. Thank you. The You might remember that in the questionnaire for this topic, we asked 5 questions. First one was if there is a need to revise and update the list of the core and non-core topics. This is pertaining the housing characteristics. This is not the, sorry, I made a mistake here. And if your answer is yes, you received also 4 questions. One is explain why the list of topics should be revised, and which topics should be revised in terms of their definitions and or classifications. And we have question on which topics need to be removed, and another topics for the newly added topics. So in terms of the housing, the recommended topics on housing characteristics, uh, actually we received very few the input for that part. Only 30% of the colleagues, expert group members say the yes, there is a need to revise the core and non-core topics. When we ask the question, why do you think that it should be revised, we received mainly these 3 comments. You might remember that in different parts of our presentations, some colleagues emphasized that we need to have an environmental dimension to the census, population housing census. So one of the reasons that the expert group members, one of the members mentioned that environment trees on the population related to climate change could be added to the recommended topics in the context of for example, the example of loading, wind erosion. So those kind of the issues we need to ask a question. So another comments was we need to also revisit the recommended topics to ensure that we cover all information needed for calculation of non-monetary wealth index, like a multidimensional poverty index. Actually, we cover many, but the recommendation is that we have to look at again to ensure we cover all topics in the recommended housing characteristics. And also there's this suggestions that the SS and amenities should be revisited. In terms of the definitions and classifications, receive two recommendations. If classification of buildings should be revised in terms of the collecting the data of type of buildings, is for what purposes it is used. Is a governmental office, it is schools, is a health center. So this is the additional topics that is suggested for the 2030 round of censuses. And also there's a recommendation that we need to revisit definition of useful floor space. When it comes to the question on which topics needs to be removed, we received the several recommendation. One is availability of elevator. Looks like that we don't need, there is a recommendation that this can be removed. And also top question on furnish, unfurnish the dwellings. This could be maybe considered to remove. And then there was another recommendations that the core housing topics like a water supply system, type of toilet, the bathing facilities, those kind of the topics related to the housing conditions also might be removed. Actually, this shows also that this recommendation shows that this is not the priority or core topics for particular for European countries. So, but other part of the world still we need to collect this data. So we will have discussions in this task teams how we can get a balance at the global level to reflect the key data needs for the housing conditions that can meet with the data requirement in the global level and meet with the data requirement for the in general. And in terms of newly added questions, we discussed several times in different places. For the 2030 round of censuses, we received really the feedback that we need to include the geospatial referencing as a core topic, or maybe non-core topic in the recommended housing characteristics in the next round. So another the newly topic suggested is related to availability and location of secondary dwellings. You might maybe remember that our questions actually recommended for the primary residence. So the question now is the recommendations now the suggest that we need to also collect data on secondary dwellings. In terms of the environmental issues, the question, the recommendation, there's a recommendations that we need to also include topic on recycling and the problems around the dwellings, like a noise, bad smells, cleanness, crime, etc. And another, the recommendations related to the availability of services around the dwellings, like a school, pharmacy, supermarket. And finally, we received several recommendations for the environmental topics. This is recommended as a non-core topic. One is related to climate change. There's the recommendations that question on food security to capture the impact of the climate change could be considered, and also access to electric vehicles, cars, scooters, bikes in the interest of climate change could be included as a non-core topic. And we also received another recommendations on the use of sustainable renewable energies such as solar panels in the housing units. And then another question on whether the residential building has undergone adoption works in order to improve the energy performance. So this is the all feedback that we received from the expert group members. Italy, over to you. Thank you. We don't hear you, Mitali. You are muted.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Miriam. That's a great summary of the feedback you received. I now invite Mr. Sanjay from India. You have the floor to share your observations with us.
Thank you, Mitali. The presentation covered almost all the observations made by different countries. So one major item was the climate change and the environmental threats on the population, but I could not understand how it will be actually collected through the census. So it really would be interesting when it will be deliberated during the next meeting of the expert groups. Similarly, one observation was on the needs to revise the terms of the definitions of useful floor space, and there were some suggestions on the housing topics which needed to be removed. I think useful floor space may also be categorized under the items which needs to be removed. Some of the items which were under the topics which needed to be removed is okay now. Water supply and toilet type of toilet. It may be still relevant in some of the countries, but it may be discussed before it is removed. Then those who are trying to shift from traditional census to register-based census, for them it is important to give each household the household ID. That perhaps is not still covered. So I think that giving the household each household an ID, so that when some countries are shifting from the traditional to register-based census, it is easier, especially when we will allow the respondents to respond on their own through online mode. So for that purpose, household ID may be important. So that if it is included, it would be better. One matrix is on given in that are on housing census types by unit of enumeration, where a detailed matrix is there or categorizing the items on core and non-core items. That needs to be deliberated in detail, because large number of items are there which may not be useful over the years due to advancement in the countries, and some of the items may be irrelevant, especially under the assets and amenities categories. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanjay. Thank you for keeping it within 5 minutes also, given we have so many discussions. I would now like to invite Paul Waweru from Kenya. Paul, are you there?
Chair, I'm here.
Yes. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thanks,
You
Chair.
have the floor.
And yes, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to share my contribution concerning the housing census. So I want to start by saying that the topics to be included in a housing census should be based on a balanced consideration of the needs of the data users, the need for international comparability, the sensitivity of the topics, the technical competence of enumerators to collect that data. We also need to consider the availability of the resources to be used in the collection of that data. And finally, the availability of alternative data sources, just in case they are there. So from the presentation that we've had, or we've seen, there's a proposal to remove the issue of water supply system, type of toilet, sewage disposal. But I still believe, I think we need to retain them and they need to be treated as questions that should be country specific. Simply because when you look at this SDGs, that's the Sustainable Development Goals, those are some of the issues that we monitor. They are some of the indicators that we capture. So I think it should be left out to countries to retain them. There are countries that do not need them. Probably everyone is using clean water, and they may not need to collect that. But there are countries that need those indicators. Then there's something else that when I was going through the document, I noted there's some topic on the type of roof. The definition of a roof needs to be clarified in the next P&R for the 2030 round of censuses, simply because we need to guide the enumerators on whether to observe the topmost roof of a multi-story building or to focus on the roof that covers the room where the household resides. For this, I mean, in the case of multi-story building, it may be necessary to differentiate between the topmost roof and the roof of the individual residential units, whereby concrete roofs, specifically in case this should be considered as the relevant type of roof to be observed and recorded, and not what we have on top of the building. Just in case it's a four-story building, we need to consider the concrete. But then as we continue discussing on the improvement of the document, we need to have that in mind so that we have a standardized definition and guidance on roof observation that will facilitate the compilation and analysis of census data. Then there's something else that I also need to talk about concerning agriculture. While the population and housing censuses have a close relationship, their relationship with the agricultural censuses is less well defined. By this I mean, we all know that agriculture is an essential aspect of many households' livelihood, particularly in rural areas. Thereby, gathering information about agricultural practices can provide valuable insights for planning and policy purposes. So I know these are documents that FAO and UNFPA have provided for guidelines for linking population and housing censuses with agricultural censuses. But you find most countries tend to do their agricultural censuses when they are doing their population and housing censuses. And that module is normally put in the housing module. And that's why I brought it here, because we normally consider agricultural questions at household level. So since there are not very many questions, probably we can lift the guideline in that document by FAO and UNFPA and have them in these principles and recommendation documents. So since there are just few questions, maybe you can lift them from that document and have them here so that we guide the countries that include agricultural module in the housing module. They don't have to go back to the other document to refer them there. So Chair, that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. You bring a very valid point that was not brought out in the questionnaires, which is linking agriculture, at least getting the agricultural frame out of the housing census. So it is worth discussing. Okay, thank you very much for your contributions. Mosidi from South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mitali. Thank you. Afternoon, colleagues. I won't be long because I think some of the issues that I wanted to talk about have already been highlighted on. I think for me, it's just a few things. I'll skip what Paul and Sanjay have already alluded to, and talk to issues that the complexities that we have seen in recent times, especially around the climate change and the inability of the questions in the censuses to respond to those. The issue of the requirement for sustainability of women settlements, for which in the census we ask about the type of living quarters and whether or not, in terms of the definition in a proper living quarters are there. But the sustainability part is something that probably will require additional questions. I don't know if the census can address to that. The issue of transition to renewable forms of energy in countries like South Africa that are struggling with the energy, we've been unable to address that in the census to try and see, well, we've been seeing the transition, but it's not a transition that it's been something out of the realm of the census in terms of how we report on that and whether or not it's responding to the country's policy in terms of renewable transition to renewable energy. We've also seen, I think I had in Miriam's report back of countries that are proposing that we drop questions on the water supply. We've been asking that question, but in recent times, the access has improved, but other things have crept in. The quality of that water, sometimes it's available. Sometimes I think some of you who've followed the news, you've seen that South Africa is now grappling with the issue of cholera, which just crept up because of the quality of the water. And we've tried to include questions, but in the census, you can only limit so much questions. Issue of connectivity as well related to the water. We ask question on connectivity, but the supply of that electricity has been constrained. And sometimes countries are unable to supply, and yet there is connectivity, enough connectivity, also linked to the transition as well. Also, with the last census, the displacement of household at the time of census to temporary shelters, when you administer a question, when there is a whole household, we struggled a bit in terms of how we phrase the questions, because the questions assume that the person is at the primary res, and at that time, because of the climate change, the issue of flooding, some households, we found them in these living conditions which are not their typical living conditions. And we've also seen emergence of complex developments and living arrangements. In South Africa, for instance, we have estate living, which has brought on the issue of accessibility for us in terms of understanding the West establishment. And they've become so complex that some of the methods we've traditionally used where we don't have access to try and understand the type of living quarters, for instance, where you'll assume that you're the neighbor will share the type of living quarters where it's more flats and there are conventional households, and they've become more complex, and we have not been able to access that side of these developments, and our assumptions sometimes are caught wanting. There's also been developments around, and we saw this going to the census. I hope I won't take much time, where we have the proliferation of what in South Africa called retirement villages. But when you go inside, it's not your typical retirement. It's a combination of an SDI and a household where a person just wants the comforts of a retirement village, but the type of living is actually a conventional household. So it's something that has emerged in the country, which we've not been able to clear up clearly, and we have to confront as we go into analysis now. And also the possibility of using admin data, it brings into it the issue of comparability of concepts and definition. I know that it's been talked a lot about it, and how we transition and how long we transition as a country, and what are the critical things that we have to consider before we can say we can use that. I have to say there has been a combination of admin data and enumeration used in the last census, but that combination was brought on by the situation we found ourselves with. It was not because we were ready to use it. So we had to jump into that and make it work. I think I appreciate the questions the issues that raised on agriculture by Kenya. In South Africa, we do ask it, but mainly as a sampling frame for agricultural census that we conduct. Thank you very much. I think I'll stop there. Thank you, Mitali. You are muted.
Tele.
Thank you, Mosidi. You actually raised a host of very important issues, and in combination with other contributions, I think we are making really good progress on things we need to look into for housing. Okay, I next invite Ali bin Mahbub Raisi from UAE to the floor. Please go ahead. You have the floor. We can't hear you. You need to unmute yourself. Sorry, we can't hear you. You'll go later? Are you saying after? Okay. Okay, then I'll invite, we have somebody from UN Habitat. I would like to invite Dogu Karaya from UN Habitat. You have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair Mitali. Good afternoon from Nairobi, Kenya. Another greetings from Nairobi. This is Dogu Karakaya from UN Habitat, United Nations Human Settlements Program, Data and Analytics Unit. My colleagues Denis and Denis Maniki and Mr. Daniel Gidira are also connected online, I think. United Nations Human Settlements Program, UN Habitat, is the focal point for all urbanization and human settlement matters within the UN system. In this role, UN Habitat works closely with many survey and census programs. If you look at the lens of SDG 11.1, where the focus is by 2030, ensure access for all to adequate, safe, and affordable housing and basic services and upgrade slums. But in the entire SDG framework, we cover many aspects, including access to basic services, energy, housing, transportation, and green public spaces, while reducing resource use and environmental impact of the urban development process. We are also responsible for many other urban dimensions articulated under the new urban agenda. Therefore, the discussion, contribution, and comments I'm providing for the PNR period will especially be in this context. Housing must need 7 main criteria: security of tenure, availability of services, materials, facilities, and infrastructure, affordability, habitability, accessibility, location, and cultural adequacy. There are very basic questions that will be greatly valuable for us. Those are missing in most of the censuses. For instance, defining slums and non-slums cluster, and housing cost versus incomes, which we have tried in many countries to compute, but data on housing costs is usually missing. This case is also valid for element of the security of tenure. It's already a core topic. However, some modifications may be needed in line with the current developments. Although a significant portion of these variables are already covered in a core or a non-core manner, we will be encouraged to adjust definitions, add options, and compile data aligned with metadata in accordance with recent developments. Member states are eager to have detailed housing and human settlements databases, which are likely to be emphasized during the second UN Habitat Assembly that will happen in June 2023, next week. Findings from there will be shared with you as well. By this opportunity, I would like to provide a very short summary of our position with an introductory information. The new urban agenda is detailing the implementation framework for the urban dimension of the SDGs. It integrates indicators of alternative data sources needed for urban monitoring processes. To help address the challenges related to access and use of urban data worldwide, UN Habitat developed urban monitoring framework, which was adopted in 2022. As the name suggests, it's a framework. It consists of a comprehensive framework. Let me share some informative links and pictures for the UMF. So UMF allows countries and cities to collect data on their performance against about 77 indicators across 5 urban domains and 4 city objectives. For all these reasons, we need all available data sources, including population and housing censuses. We will provide contribution to design, data compilation, calculation, and publication processes within the scope of population and housing censuses for possible UNF indicators. Thanks very much for your attention. Over to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dogu. Are we all set up, Mr. Raizi?
Can you hear me?
Yes. But you have to put off one and keep one on.
I know this is the problem. Hello. I have problem with my computer. I don't know what is the problem with the computer.
Yeah, it seems to be echoing.
Can you give me some more time? Let me fix the problem.
Perhaps you can type in your observations in the chat.
Okay, but I have to make a presentation, right?
Okay.
So I send the presentation to CV. Can you ask him to put it on, please?
Can UNSP please put his presentation up?
Yes, we will.
Yes, we have it
Andrea,
ready.
can you please?
If Ali wants to connect with the phone and just talk through presentation.
Can you hear me now?
I think it's being suggested that you can just speak through the phone instead of your computer.
Okay, just 1 minute.
Perfect. Right now you're perfect.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oh.
No, start it again.
1 minute.
So you must have joined with multiple devices. That's why you have the echo.
Because my computer is not working. Now?
Right now
Hello?
it sounds good.
Okay, because I turned off my computer.
Okay, great.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry, but you know, this housing information is a very complicated one. I am not going to go through the whole presentation. I have subject. Even within the country, you have different type of housing unit. And I think we should, what I suggest, because I don't want to go through the whole presentation, is because most of the subject was covered. I recommend if we can send a questionnaire to different countries, what information they collected regarding the housing unit, and how they use this information. So accordingly, we can try to design a questionnaire for at least, you know, for the countries that we can compare around the world. And we can put some information regarding for regions wise, because on the international wise, we have 200 countries. We cannot compare information for all the 200 countries regarding housing information. And housing data is very important information, but the problem is also what the difference between a building and housing data. Building is to me, building is the main structure, and housing unit is part of the building. And the building, it's used for housing, it's used for living, or it's used for working, or it's used for both living and working. And I think the building is the main structure that we try to concentrate on. And then accordingly, we can go from the building to if it is housing structure, what type of housing structures. Another problem is small areas. When we talk about small areas, it's enumeration areas is different from country to country, and it only be used for the census purposes. I recommend if we can use the same system that they use in Australia, mesh block. Mesh block is a smaller area. It's used not only for census, it's used for different purposes, for planning, for services, and it's easy to connect small areas and to create a bigger area than enumeration areas. I suggest that we should look at the small areas. If we can take the same system as the Australian created the system, the mesh block. What I recommend also, if we can circle a questionnaire to different countries and ask them about the information that they collected in the last census regarding the housing units. But I don't want to go through all the details because it's well known to everybody. But I think it's very difficult subject. We cannot have the same information in the geographical region, and we cannot have the same information on the international level. So we should at least have minimum information we require on the international level regarding housing and buildings, and then we can give different regions, geographical regions, the choice to have more information that they need for the region that they belong to. That's just in a few quick way that I wanted to explain about the housing census. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Al-Raizi. You make a good point that there's so much variation in the world of 200 countries that we do need to think which is core topic for which country and what are the various structures available. Okay, now that we have heard from all our discussants, I open the floor to any comments, suggestions, questions to discuss housing in the PNR. Please raise your hand and then we can I'll call upon. Okay, go ahead, Monsieur Job. We have you raised your hand. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. I would like to second the presenters who have made their case. I think there is a need to really get to know the deficiencies of the household housing questionnaires that have been used in across the other countries, because I understand or I've seen two or three countries where during analysis is when they note that they could have included one or two indicators for them to be able to compute some one or two questions for them to be able to compute some indicators. For example, I remember one discussion where they noted that they could have added one question to establish the distance from distance or time taken to fetch water from one point to the household. So you note that so many countries during analysis they have noted there are some gaps in the housing module, and therefore it is important if we can find a way of getting information in terms of what were the limitations such that we can be able to also advise going forward. Thank you.
So very good point. It also actually, the distance or the time to fetch water is actually another climate change indicator. If tracked over time, if people are spending more time fetching water. But I think South Africa raised a really good point about also quality of water, and quality of connectivity of electricity. We say, yes, there are so many houses connected, but really, are they connected or are they having really, brownouts and blackouts most of the time? So, other comments? It was interesting to note UNSD's observation that somebody said that maybe the WASH questions, water sanitation, should not be core topics. It really speaks to how different the world is in different places. Those are really core topics for much of the world, I would say. Majority of the world has issues with housing, water, sanitation. Um, and so, but yes, maybe the PNR can be a little more nuanced and say that, for developed world countries, perhaps this is not required. But it's definitely a core topic for many countries in the world. I really think that the climate change angle is important as we go into 2030. We are seeing increasing water, flooding, erosion, as somebody said. I'm just not sure whether we have good census questions to capture it. And that is an area we should all actually discuss seriously about how to capture that in a census, because going forward, this is going to be a problem. I think it's going to be not only housing, it's going to be food security, access to water, etc. So I think this will be an important area of discussion as we talk about UNPNR 3 for housing.
Yeah.
Did I see a hand go up and then it, no?
Yes, please.
Matthias.
I have Matthias. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's just to mention regarding all these new topics related to climate change. Of course, I think you already know my position on the fact that the census questionnaire should be not very long, but maybe for this, it is more analytical than collecting additional data. If we know where houses are, the distribution of houses, and then with geospatial data, this question can be handled. So maybe I totally agree that we should take into account in the principle of recommendation, but maybe mostly on the analytical side. So in the different thematic reports, topics reports, we can have one on climate change and all these new coming issue, and but acknowledging that we will use both census data and geospatial data, which already exist on some of these phenomena, and they can be relatively maybe not predicted, but we can know where landslide is more, there is more probability for landslide to happen, for instance, or flood, etc., etc. Over.
No, that is a point well taken. And in this round of censuses, we have used so much of geo-referencing, geospatial, but when it comes to analysis, we neglect that. And it could be that the capacity of countries to use geo-reference data for analysis is limited, and that may be an area for strengthening. Okay, I have another person, Fred Okwayo. Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Frederick from UNFPA. So I think I agree with much of the issues that have been alluded to, but my question relates to the MISH block as the unit for enumeration of the census to replace the enumeration area which is being proposed. And I was wondering, because I think currently nothing stops us from doing that, because an enumeration area is just a small unit that we used for the purpose of ensuring coverage, but also lack of omission. And if we complicate it like that, then it may bring a challenge, in the sense that, insofar as I'm concerned, I thought the census results are released based on the administrative units of the country. And so long as this unit, whether you call it MASH or you call it enumeration area, so long as they can be aggregated up, then that is important. Also, I was just looking at it from the point of view of the small area estimation, because we are talking of also coming up with analysis of maybe the gridded population and how that then fits into, because this is much more applicable in developed areas like New York, where you have streets which are very, very, very particular, as opposed to some of the areas in the rural area, like let's say in Nairobi, where you have the Kibera slums, where you cannot even divide it into those blocks. So I would think that in a way we may not prescribe in detail about using the Australian use case. So I just wanted to get maybe more clarification on why the colleague is recommending this, when practically on the ground it may not be really possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Would I think it was UAE that raised it, right? Mr. Al-Raizi, would you like to address why you think that that's a preferred?
Because the enumeration area in the census is for census purposes only, and it differs from country to country in the size. When we talk about MISH block, or we call it in UAE statistical block, what we did in Sharjah, we divided the whole Sharjah Emirat to a small area, to MISH blocks. So it's easy for us when they ask us to give us information for area 1. I can add this MISH block together and give them the area 1. But before, they used to ask for area 1, and the enumeration area was much bigger. It was very difficult to divide the area in small areas. But it's easy to build small areas and link it together. At the same time, what we did, we linked the household and establishment. With the household, we linked, if there's children in the age of the school, we linked the household to the nearest school. And if they have old people or they need health services, we linked the household with the nearest hospital or clinic. And at the same time, we link the household with the closest, area where they can buy their food. It's easy to add small areas and build bigger area than bigger area to divide it in small areas. And I think we have to think about it, because I was going through different countries' experience. Some countries, the enumeration area is 200 households or housing units. Some enumeration area is 100. Some is 400. We cannot compare enumeration area between countries, because it differs in sizes. But if we use the surveillance system, it's easy, and it's very easy to build MISH block than to build enumeration area.
Ellie, can you? Mitali, you are muted.
Sorry. I have Matthias. He's got his hand up. Did you want to respond?
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes, please. Yeah, it is just, of course, to respond to Ali. Of course, currently, if the census is georeference, then that helps us to go beyond the idea of enumeration area. Currently, enumeration area or whatever area is important to organize the work on the field. Right, and also to have a unit. Traditionally, it helps as the smallest unit, but currently, given the fact that we are able to georeference all the data and to create population raster data, of course, we are able then to, after that, to compute any population of any given area, link this population to any infrastructure data. So the georeferencing of household solve that problem, but we still need a unit which help us to manage and organize the work on the field, and especially in Africa. In Africa, enumeration area are still important for this purpose, because even under the enumeration area, we know very well, and it is very well understood. But when we go beyond the enumeration area, and for instance, talk in our case about the blocks, it is so different and varies according, as Fred has already said, to the type of place of residence or to the organization of the space. So, but enumeration area is well understood, and as I said, georeferencing the census help to be able to, after, disentangle it in each as we really need, and not only based on the administrative unit. Over.
Yes, I think all the discussions in housing is actually highlighting the fact that countries are very different. The way residences and housing is very different and laid out. Africa, many parts of Asia have areas that are, the structures of housing are so temporary and so mobile that it would be hard to have what the US, Australia, they all do as building up. But I think every country does have statistical units, which then can be aggregated upwards. And we, of course, we don't recommend that anybody share data at the EA level as far as possible, just because of privacy concerns. Maybe it is used by the government, but there was also a suggestion about Matthias, that's your hand is raised from the old, right? It's not a new.
No, sorry, it is not a new one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we have had a lot of fruitful discussions. Thank you for your contributions. I am not aware of the Habitat new recommendation, so I look forward to reading that and seeing how well we can discuss those requirements vis-a-vis the census, and whether census is the best place to ask the questions that would address SDG concerns on this. So with that, if there are any last comments. Okay, thank you. I'm finishing this session early. I actually thought everybody, there were 5 speakers and there's going to be no time. So I was rushing through. But any last comments? Anybody's welcome. We still have 3 minutes to go. Or I return those 3 minutes to you and enjoy a longer coffee break, Miriam.
Thank you so much, Mitali. I also thank you so much for the very good summary of all the discussions. We took note of all the contributions that we received from this session. And yeah, so this is the end of session 6. Now we can move to the next session, session 7, which discuss how we can improve the structure and design of the principle and recommendations. So I would like to invite our chair for this session, Oliver. Yeah, you're here. So Oliver, who is the the assistant director. Oh, sorry. You are a lead statistician, but we promote. Anyway, he's the lead statistician and advisor to World Bank, chief statistician. Yeah, Oliver, floor is yours.
Thank you, Miriam, for this promotion you just gave me. So, and thanks a lot, Mitali, for ending your session so perfectly on time. I'll try to do the same because I understand that my session is the one that will end with the coffee break. This is the last thematic session, and as Miriam mentioned, is going to be related to the outline, to the design, and to the format of the end product that we're all going to work on. So I think we will all benefit a lot from having, more clarity and marching orders on what's the final output we expected to deliver. There have been a lot of suggestions for adding content, for revising content. So for sure, it will be a challenge to put all that in one document. There's a lot of expectation also that this final product will be operational and really a practical guide. So the input we'll have received, that UNSD will have received from the survey will certainly be very helpful to guide us on that, as it has been for all other sessions. So without further ado, I would just ask UNSD to present this feedback and suggestions received through the survey. I don't know if it's you, Sefe, or is it Miriam who's going to do that, but you have the floor.
Thank you, Olivier. It's going to be me. Hello again, everyone. I will be making UNSD's presentation based on the feedback that we have received from the expert groups, the expert group members. And this presentation will be the feedback that we received through the questionnaire on the structure, design, and format of the PNR. Before sharing the feedback that we received from you and summarizing it, as UNSD, we had internal discussions on how to proceed in terms of what type of structure and design and format that the fourth revision of the PNR will have. And we had a few options that we considered. Of course, given that decreasing budgets for our publication programs, we no longer have big budgets as in the past. We have very limited resources for printing. So, so one of the ideas that we have is just to have an electronic version of the PNR in the form of either an ebook or in the form of a wiki platform, where the content of the PNR can be navigated easily through clicks, where users can download and print various sections of the content of the PNR, and where we use hyperlinks to link to various contents, to footnotes, to other publications, or to other resources that we would like to connect the PNR with. Of course, we will have a full PDF version, which will not be printed. But for print purposes, we also are considering to have a skinny or a light version of the PNR, where only the updated, the revised text in the next version of the PNR will be made available in the Sprint edition. And then cross-references will be made to the current version of the PNR or to other reference materials. So these are some of the options we're considering. Now, with that as background, let's take a look at the feedback that we received from you. In terms of the structure, design, and format of the PNR, we had 3 questions on this topic. The first question was asking whether or not the experts agreed there is adequate balance in terms of the detail of discussion provided in each chapter or section of the PNR. Another question was whether or not, looking at the table of contents, the order or the sequencing of the chapters and the sections of the PNR adequately reflect census processes. The way the information is organized, is it logical for users to quickly find material references that they're looking for? Another question we asked was suggestions for improving the design and the format of the PNR in order to make it more readable, more useful to users. So in terms of whether or not the experts found the current version of the PNR to have sufficient balance in terms of the detail of discussion provided in each sections and chapters of the publication, 3/4, 75% of respondents agreed that the current structure, the current the structure and content sufficient. It has sufficient balance. The level of discussions in each different areas and processes of the census are sufficient. In terms of whether or not the sequencing, the ordering of the chapters and the sections are following census processes, 80% of you have agreed that the current structure works, and we can potentially follow the same sequencing in the next version of the PNR. In terms of suggestions that you have provided for improving the structure, the design, and the format for the PNR, almost everyone suggested having electronic version of the publication, not just a print or a PDF version of the document, but also an interactive digital document, either in the form of an ebook or user-friendly web version with interactive features. That is also accessible on various devices, on various screen sizes, with functionalities for searching, navigation, and with the material fully indexed and hyperlinks provided to reference documents and reference paragraphs, instead of providing textual footnotes, providing hyperlinks to the relevant publication that's being referenced. And also having hyperlinks to indexes, glossaries, references, and also having hyperlinks that will enable a user to go back from any page to go back to the table of contents and to come back for ease of navigation. And also, whenever for example, standard codes such as ISO country codes or ISIC, ISCO codes, wherever there's reference to them, to have hyperlinks to click and directly go to the actual codes themselves. There was also suggestion to have to organize the table of contents in such a way that at first glance you have only high-level headings, and then when you drill down, when you click, the table of content expands and you'll see more details in order to browse different levels of headings. There were also suggestions to have visualizations in the next version of the PNR, there were suggestions for the PNR to contain diagrams, thematic maps, visual aids, flowcharts, wherever they are relevant. For example, to use maps in order to, when information on geographic something related pertaining to geographic information is discussed. There are also suggestions to use photos. I don't know if that will fit in with the theme of the PNR. There were also suggestions to have a summary of the PNR in terms of in the form of, for example, an executive summary section that can highlight the most important points, the most important recommendations that are contained in the PNR. There was also a suggestion to have a how to use this document so that users have a guide to navigate the document and find the information they're looking for quickly. There were also suggestions for using section summaries and call-out boxes to highlight some key information in the publication. There were also some suggestions to have a skinny or a light version of the PNR. One suggestion was to shorten the main body of the publication and to have more of the detailed discussions in annexes to organize the information in that form. There were also suggestions to have boxes wherever they are relevant in order to highlight some tips and notes, and also to provide examples, and also to highlight good practices from countries. In terms of formatting the publication, there were suggestions to use colors to make some important text stand out. They're visible and the reader is quickly, their attention is called to it. There were also suggestions for adding name indexes, providing a list of tables, providing more references, and also to have heavy cross-referencing in order to avoid duplicating text in various parts of the publication. There was also a suggestion to use the LaTeX typesetting software. I'm not familiar with this type of software, but according to the feedback we received, that using such a typesetting software can improve the readability of the PNR. There is also a suggestion to place the footnotes at the bottom of the page. Currently, the footnotes are displayed on the side. So some users do not like such formatting, and the suggestion was to place footnotes in the typical position at the bottom of the page. There was also one suggestion to harmonize the index numbering with the paragraph numbering, so that each paragraph number includes characters that will help identify which part of the PNR, which chapter, which section of the PNR is being the text refers to. That's all in terms of the feedback we have received from you through the questionnaires that you completed. Thank you, Olivier.
Thanks a lot, Sefi. So, once again, thanks a lot to everyone who provided input to this survey. The first thing I, see in these slides is that the number of people who disagreed with the fact that the existing document provides relatively good balance and sequence of content is very small. The no in the second slides were very small number. I don't know if you have the opportunity still to try to get in touch with the people who disagreed with this statement that the content is properly balanced and sequenced, because the view should be taken into account, and the people who disagree might have good reason to do so. So I would suggest, if you can, to try to to get in touch with them. I also saw in your in this summary that there is certainly a lot of interest for providing a lot of hyperlinks, and that's that's a way to make these documents probably more relevant practically. But we also understand that hyperlinks can be broken and can change and can, in some cases, need to be updated. So this flexibility it brings also comes with another issue. The PNR is a document that has to be approved officially by the UNSD. So, I'm not sure to what extent providing links to external resource would be a constraint. So it would be good to know from UNSD, what can be done and what cannot be done, considering that this document has this official status. And then last, I heard, you didn't put that in your slide, but I heard that your budget is very, has been cut a lot. So I would be interested to know what that means for the translation of this document at the end. We want this document to be obviously available in multiple languages. But we have 6 discussants on this topic. So I'll give the floor immediately to Sebastian Ruiz from Colombia. Let's try to stick to the 5 minutes time that we all have so that we can end this session also on time. Thank you.
Hello, nice to meet you all. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sophie, for the nice compilation of the recommendations. I won't take so much time. I just want to add to those recommendations that you compiled in the slides. First of all, I suggest also the ebook or the e-version, because it's really comfortable maybe for the readable. And also I was thinking about, because you already said many of the things that I wanted to say, but I just want to add that maybe we can introduce the examples we have seen in this forum, let's say, because it's really important that we follow how the country is developed. And I also want to just mention that in DANE, which is the National Institute of Statistics of Colombia, we are trying to do like simulations with censuses, like the people you need in terms of the budget, or the people you need in terms of the geographic locations. So I consider that it could be an improve. Maybe if we can not just the interactive version of the PNR, I think we can go further, like giving the examples and also putting the examples in simulations. So in that sense, I really want to thank the organizations because it was so useful for me, because it's my first time in this firm. So I really enjoyed and learned from the countries, and I think this experience has to be shared. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Sebastian. Now we're going to Indonesia. Ali Said, you have the floor.
Thank you, Oliver. I would like to highlight some points for suggestion on improving format of the PNR. Actually, the current contents of the PNR is actually perfect, since the contents are proportional to the substantial issues in the population. What Selfie presented already seems to cover most aspects of the design and format of publication. But first of all, with regard to the structure, maybe I would like to suggest to restructure some chapters in the publication. For example, in part 1, chapter 3, what uses of population and housing census, maybe section D and E are moved to an independent chapter after discussing all aspects of the census. And maybe section D and E become chapter 7, maybe, with the title relationship of population and housing censuses to other survey censuses or administrative data. And then for chapter 5, about operational aspect for register-based census or combined method. This chapter can be part of section B and C in chapter 4, or separate section as section D in chapter 4. And part 2, for example, I would like to suggest that chapter 6 to 12 maybe can be combined into one chapter under the title Census Management. So this chapter 12 is pulled into one chapter. And in recent manual, the concept of and definition are still scattered in many chapters. So as part of a structure, I would suggest to make a summary of concept and definition, maybe put in the attachment or attachment maybe. And then regarding the design and format of printing versions, I think for me the current PDF version, I think it's okay, but probably a matter of font size and font type maybe. And maybe I would like to highlight the more on electronic version of the PR. The format online version of the PR should be, I agree, should be distinguished with, between the printed version 1 and provide multi-format of the publication that are differentiated by CEPI is important for the readers and give the choice in how they contents, and we don't just limit to PDF format, but we offer other formats such as HTML or digital. Utility formatting is important because formatting makes a big difference in how well people engage with the content. And one aspect of formatting on the publication is, I think, already presented by CEPI, is how to make it interactive. So many users will read the electronic publication on mobile device, maybe in the form of ebook reader or tablet instead of their computer. So therefore, we should do the electronic publication is interactive. And I think it's already presented by CEPI. And I think another important aspect that I would like to add is the format of offline online version. I mean, in offline version only limited in black and white, but online version should be user-friendly and catchy. I agree with that. And the important thing maybe the online version must also accommodate person with disabilities who wish to. I don't know. I think it haven't been addressed by a survey. So there are two main features accommodating disabilities, is namely responsive voice and widget accessibility. And responsive voice is a feature to convert text into voice. And with this feature, I think you can listen to the text, and that has been selected to make it easier to read information provided. So we can do this by selecting the text or cursor. I think this we can add from the presentation by Shirley. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ali. I mean, I'm sure UNSD will take into account the accessibility by disability, and I don't know, there are some international standards, ADA and others to, that needs to be complied with. I think that's a very, very good point. I also appreciate very much you providing, these specific suggestions. I saw in the video Francesca taking notes at a very high speed. I don't know if you have shared your suggestions to UNSD, by email or other. If you have not, I should, I would ask you to do that so they have the, your full input, available in to the secretariat. So, thank you very much, Ali. Now I'll give the floor to a colleague from.
I will send it. Maybe tomorrow.
Very good. Thank you, Ali. So I'll give the floor now to our colleague from Oman, Yusuf Al-Riyami.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, we are on the end of that 3 days, unfortunately, but just I have small comments. Overall, the structure, I think, is fine. It's in the line with the main of themes of census. it's very important that to include methodology, planning, and also activities, population house. And very concerned that I think we have a part of our structure that's something we call it the library, where all the methodology has been used in the census. We have to publish for public. At least they have to know how the definition of each, or let's say in another language, the metadata of each indicator or the way which they got it there. Of course, for each country, there is objective, not only for the census, I mean, just maybe each country also he can design maybe special structure as much as they can use this information or this data later on for decision maker. And in this area, I think we have to make sure, for example, design I think is fine, but also it's very important to make a different friendly summarize highlights such as infograph. I think nowadays most people are looking for infograph more than read a number. About I think the method to dissemination, full manual. I think we need to have a manual there. Also could be separated manual parts, and also summarize versions. I think also translates versions. We have to be there. Infographs, animation, and also nowadays most of us they think about AI. The future is coming for that. How we can integrate our dissemination of this. Maybe we are talking about 2030. In that time, we don't know what's happening about AI. And maybe we have to be think from now how we can utilize this technology in the future to be make it easy for people to use the result of the census. And I think also I'm always said IT and IT system also they will offer every time a new technology. In this case, we have to make sure we have to realize this innovation. And by this point, thank you so much. And I think also we have to think about the special application for the result. Thank you so much for these opportunities, and happy to be there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andriami. Now I'll give the floor to a colleague from Poland, Marcin Simkowiak. Marcin, okay, I see you.
Okay, thank you very much. Many things were highlighted also by my colleagues. Anyway, I will try to focus on the most important things. At first, I will try to focus on format. So this is what Saifa said. I'm missing personally the list of figures and the list of tables. Anyway, we didn't mention anything about a list of abbreviation. I would add a list of abbreviation at the end of P&R document. In my opinion, it would improve readability and utility. Right now, we have plenty of different abbreviation like GIS, GPS, ICF. Many of them are known by users, but for instance, when I heard for the first time about ICF, I knew what is it. Anyway, 10, 20 pages later, I don't remember what is it. So if we could have a list of abbreviation at the end, it would help a lot, at least from my point of view. So I would also think about footnotes. This is what Saifa said. Right now, all footnotes are placed on the right or on the left side of the page. If we place footnotes at the bottom, then we would have fewer pages, to be honest. This is what was already said by other colleagues. The whole document should be dynamic, and the links redirecting to specific parts or pages should be added. Right now, if you click on a specific paragraph, you have to go scrolling down to a specific page or specific paragraph, and it would help a lot. I was thinking this is just only to consider about adding maybe at the end of this P&R document a glossary of basic terms and definitions. And from my point of view, it would improve readability, because who will be the main user of this P&R document? Probably many persons with different skills. And for instance, when somebody hears for the first time about calibration, statistical disclosure control, maybe it would give a short explanation, what is it? Finally, I think that we should think about our P&R document in terms of marketing products. So I would change the cover design. So epi-link of P&R visual cover design is highly recommended. Right now it's white with some text. Because we are talking about census, we could add some photos on the first page connected to persons, to houses, something like that. And this is what I saw in different ebooks. So we could add social sharing buttons. So we could encourage readers to share content with their networks by making it easy for them to do so. So if we see, for instance, Facebook logo, we can click on Facebook logo, and then we can share within our organizations with other people in our net. Regarding references, of course, we should update all references taking into account experiences gained from the last census and from the newest literature. This is my suggestion also to consider. Whenever possible, a link to the publication or article should be provided. Right now, if we go to a section of references, if we click on a specific references, nothing happens. So if we can add a link, it would help a lot. I checked, and I think many documents may be linked with a proper hyperlink to internet. So right now, many references are incomplete. Authors or institutions are missing, so what is very annoying, to be honest. And I was wondering if we can add more important references to specific terms, definitions, and concepts. For instance, when we see for the first time a specific definitions like calibration, statistical disclosure, control, whatever, if we give a basic reference, maybe it would help readers to find more information about definitions or concepts they are reading about. And about structure, of course, this is what we said so far. Many parts of P&R documents, many parts of pages should be updated. So some topics should be revised, some removed, and some should be added. For instance, machine learning methods for census data, the role of big data in the context of censuses. Of course, we should take into account experiences and the newest literature. Another thing, from my point of view, which is worth of considering, this is what also mentioned yesterday, where it's possible, we should include many case studies illustrating applications of good practices in censuses, based, of course, on experiences from different countries. And I was thinking for a very long time, I was working as a methodologist. I was working with Python, R, SAS, and so on. I think that one section, subsection, maybe not a chapter, about the use of existing software like R, Python, QGIS to process census data, about imputation, calibration, data cleaning, data editing, would help, especially countries which used, for instance, so far, software, commercial software, and would like to conduct the next census using open software. So there is a very nice web page about R, where all packages are in one place, how to use different packages in context of official statistics. So maybe we could add one small subsection about possibility of using such software in the context of census. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Marcin, again for very detailed suggestions. I think it will be difficult for UNSD to find out the best way to take advantage of all the advantage of the modern document management systems and everything that electronic document will offer, while keeping full consistency with a paper version that I assume must be also produced. So good luck, UNSD. We'll move now to David Thorogood from Eurostat.
Yes, hello everybody. I think I can be quite quick, as a number of the points I was going to raise have already been mentioned by the preceding speakers. Really, this is such a time of change in terms of methods and data sources for the censuses in many countries, and to some extent, this variety of needs also means that we need the P&R document needs to actually try to meet these different types of needs and different users. I think the current structure and format works well as a PDF document or as a printed document, but as we move to have the option of having some sort of online version or ebook, then this approach allows many different options and allows us to be more flexible and to try and meet these different user needs. I would particularly highlight what I think would be useful is to have a really sort of customizable routing through the document. So, for example, if a country is looking to make changes and to adopt administrative data sources, it's possible to follow a routing through which doesn't just focus on one section on these data sources, but actually provides every link or to every part of the PNR which actually has for which the change to administrative sources would have particular implications. I think it's been mentioned already in terms of the importance of having including examples and case studies either directly or having links to those. And I think it's very easy to look at the content of the PNR, but actually when you actually see how a country has taken those and has actually put it into practice, taking into account the different national situations, I think that is very valuable. I think it's also good to have links to the different more detailed thematic documents, either those, for example, something such as from the ILO on employment, and this will help us to ensure that there is a coherence between the census and other statistics, and also possibly links to some of the regional recommendations which are made, which can focus on really the specific needs of countries in particular global regions. Okay, I think I would leave it there. As I say, many things I was going to say have already been mentioned. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, David, and also for suggesting that we produce a document that kind of adapt to the profile of the reader. What I would suggest is that if anyone knows about existing guide that really implements some of these best practice that makes the use of the guide very useful, let's share that with the secretariat. It would be easier to take inspiration from their best practice or what we really like in other documents instead of trying to invent that in the context of this project. So we'll go now to the last of our discussion from GCC Stat. Salah Al-Muzami, if you're there. I don't have a reaction. Please look at the list of participants.
I don't see his name in the list. In the list of people joining the meeting. You are muted, Olivier.
Sorry, Sefer. So if we don't have the last discussion, and if we don't have someone from GCC to speak on his behalf, then let's open the floor for discussion. I obviously don't expect this discussion in the next 10 minutes to come to a final decision, the outline of the document. So I mean, maybe on UNSD side, you may also tell us how you see this proceeding. How are we going to come with a final outline before, final, or maybe at least a proposed outline before the different task teams start, producing the content. It will be useful to know at what stage and what will be the decision process for the outline. But the floor is open.
Maybe I can respond to your question. In terms of the outline for the PNR, for the next version of the PNR. After we conclude this meeting, we will establish the task teams, and each task team will develop its own work plan. They will identify areas in which they will do the revision, do a division of labor. They will so at the end of the first phase of several months, they will they will submit the version they've been working on to UNSD, the Secretariat. At that time, we will collect input from all task teams, and at that time we will have we will compile all the contributions, and we will try to order it in the form that we received, and then that will be submitted to the second expert group meeting. So at the second expert group meeting, we'll review the draft document, and at that time we will have structured coming in from the different task teams. At that time, we will be approving the table of contents. So actually, for the last meeting of the third meeting, by the third meeting, we should have basically as close to the final outline for the publication. So it will be something that will develop over the course of the work of the task teams.
Thanks, Joseph. I don't see any hands raised, so raise your hand if you have any questions or comment to provide. But in the meantime, Sefi, you also mentioned, I think, where was it yesterday or the day before yesterday, that you expect all input in MS Word. Is that still the case? Because I saw in your slides, there were some suggestions on using different formats. I don't know if you intend to use some collaboration platform to write this and provide the text input to you.
Yes, certainly. Of course, we will provide both the Word version as well as we are exploring a number of document sharing, collaborating softwares. Some have been used within UNSD, and we will see which one would suit the use for our group here, and then we'll be making a suggestion for that in the coming days. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And so they seem to be consensus on an electronic format for, as the main vehicle for disseminating this report. So will the Secretariat also provide all the technical guidance on this? And I see Francesca also raise her hand. So probably you have an answer to some of the questions. So Francesca.
Thank you, Olivier, and thank you all for this great feedback on the structure and the format. Of course, we are not expecting to come up with an agreement on this specific topic. We wanted to bring the design and the format of the PNRs for discussion at this first meeting, but just to have a sense of how you see this product developing for the next revision. To gather your experience, your views, but we were not expecting a decision as of today. So I think that we need to also consolidate our understanding of our own resources in-house. There was already a mention before that we are very limited ones. We'll try to do our best to honor all the wish lists that we took note of in this important discussion of this morning. But again, I trust that you will understand that once we get back to you with some counter proposal, you will also understand that we have limited resources and we are doing our best. In summary, we will definitely have a printed version. We are thinking of something that is going on the skinny side, something that is light. It's not just the issue of printing, it's particularly the issue of translations. We need to translate everything in the 6 official languages. So we write in English. It's going to be edited by the UN official process. And then it needs to go into the other 5 official UN languages. So you can understand the heaviness of the process itself. So we were thinking of something that is on the light side for the printed version. And then by all means, we want to modernize the way we disseminate our publications. And we are thinking seriously of having some ebook or some other online product that will definitely improve the way different users can navigate the product and can retrieve the information they need. So thank you for all the feedback and the details. We took note of everything you said. We will consolidate your inputs. We will need to brainstorm internally, looking at, again, the resources that we have available, and then we will get back to you with what is realistic from our side. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Francesca. I saw at one point of hands being raised. I don't see it anymore, so I guess the question may have been answered. Just then a last question, Francesca, if there is none from anyone else. You know, at the World Bank, when we produce flagship publications like the World Development Reports, we get a lot of input. Obviously, a small fraction of these background materials will end up in the final publication. This will be the case also in the, I mean, for the PNR. We have here a group of 60 experts who will represent organizations that might have other experts that will contribute to this. So is there a plan or an intent to, you know, also maintain a kind of repository of, you know, the input by this group that would not find its place in the final guidelines? I think this was mentioned, maybe what was it yesterday or the day before yesterday by a colleague from South Africa who was talking about, you know, wiki or, you know, repository of these guidelines.
Yeah. Definitely, this is really the trend now. We usually have, you know, a final book that is concise and is on the light side of things, because we know, as many of you pointed out, that people are not really looking for very extensive reading. They are more into something that is more visual and it's much easy to use. But at the same time, we could think of having a hub. That's what we do for other statistical programs, where we can be much more generous in terms of the material that we share, where we could also think of compiling case studies. Many of you pointed out on the importance to also give some hands-on examples of what countries are doing. So all that very valuable material could be shared in a hub accompanying the PNRs that will be printed, maybe a light version printed, something that is longer or more lengthy, also available online.
Yeah, and also to add to Francesca's point, whatever doesn't make it to the PNR because it's very detailed, very technical, it will be incorporated into the other handbooks that accompany the PNR. We have the management handbook, we have the handbook on editing, we have on various aspects of census taking. So they will end up in the next revisions of these accompanying handbooks, guidelines, and technical reports. So the material will not be wasted.
Exactly, that was my point. Whatever you offer to us will be used. Nothing will be lost. So please be generous. We are happy to receive as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. And I saw the comment by Margaret. We will make sure that this and also in the, I mean, that this we take advantage of the existing platforms. We're not going to create a huge diversity of of system for sharing this information. I think I see one hand raised. Is Mr. Al-Yami? You have some?
Yeah, thank you so much. Just I had a question, but Francisco, she already answered. The first question was about the translate this document for 6 language. Maybe, of course, it's coming, and we will need it for soon as possible, maybe. But also said yesterday he explained the time, the schedule for this project, I think, and in between, is there any plan for, I mean, the regional area, or in each region, they can discuss this topic in between until we finish the final version of this handbook? Because yes, I think some country in the way to have the census, some of them by 2025, so they are planning. It depends by each country and each region. So to utilize this this modern version, can maybe are we expected to have it in our region, maybe discussing or something like this? Thank you.
Francesca, you take that one.
Well, so this is, we are discussing the principles and recommendations for the population housing census for 2030 at the global level, right? So we are really trying to focus on this overarching framework, key building blocks that all countries in the world should find relevant for their own census undertaking, but with the understanding that each regional commission is also organizing and starting discussions with their own countries and constituencies at the regional level. So there are mirroring what we are doing at the global level. I'm familiar with what the ECE region is doing. I don't know if Fiona is still with us. They actually already started and they are doing something very similar, but of course focusing more on the needs and the context of their own region. Maybe Sefi knows it better, or Miriam. I'm not sure about ESQA region, where they stand, but I know that ECLAC is doing it too. In the Asia region, this is also happening. So there are parallel processes that are ongoing. And the understanding is that at the global level, we will also bridge, we will also build on these ongoing processes at the regional level. Sefi, you want to come in?
Yes, yeah, of course, we are all familiar with the ECE regional recommendations. We are also aware of regional adaptations of the global recommendations by the ECA for the African region and by ECLAC for the Latin American group of countries. But of course, the other regional commissions, ESQA, ESCAP also, they provide support for censuses. Although Ismail is here, so maybe he can correct me if I'm wrong. Also Afsane from ESCAP, she's also here, so maybe they will also feel free to jump in and then offer your perspectives. But I'm not aware of any like regional, I mean, they had on different aspects of the census, they provide guidance and support. Maybe Ismail is raising his hand, so maybe instead of I speaking on their behalf, it would be better to hear directly from Ismail and from Afsana, so that we know the extent of support they provide for censuses, and whether or not what is important right now is whether or not they're going to issue regional recommendations, and if so, there will be a need to make a coordination between the global recommendations and the regional recommendations, so we are consistent in terms of the recommendations and the key messages. So with the ECE, we already have UNSD is also participating in the revision process for the ECE guidelines. So we are aware of where things stand there, and we are in contact, and there is room for coordination. Yeah. So, but for the other regions, maybe it would be nice to hear from Ismail Afsana and also Jeff from the SPC, if also the Pacific Island countries, the SPC provides a lot of support for censuses and CRVs, and in general on statistical matters for the Pacific Island countries. So it would be nice to hear their perspectives. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So let's go in the order in which the hands were raised. So Ismail.
Yes, thank you. Yes, indeed, Sefi, we in ESQA, we have a program of supporting census for the Arab states, and it's very active program through the regional task force in cooperation with UNFPA, of course. And we have a knowledge based in Arabic and English. So all the publication that we can get, we try to translate into Arabic. In addition, we have a specific publication regarding census concerning the Arab states. But in general, we didn't work on specific regional recommendations. So we are based on the PNR, and we customize according to the regional needs. Maybe as you proposed in the next round, we can have some small or brief specific recommendations regarding the region. But I see in general that the PNR is more generic, and it covers everything. So to do some regional recommendations. It needs some efforts in the future and to see some specific needs from each countries. So this it can be considered. And our cooperation with UNSD is permanent, or all the time we have our work with UNSD in addition to our technical assistance to the Arab states. So that's all for my side. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Ismail. Afsane for ISCAM.
Yes, thank you. Actually, the support that we are providing to the countries in our region is mainly related to the use of administrative data for their censuses. And we do not have any plan for developing any regional principles and recommendations for our region. And what we have currently on our agenda is that we already produced a report of how countries in our region are using administrative data for their censuses, and also another one is a capacity building, a training workshop that we are partnering with ECE and the UNSD and UNFPA and some other partners that will happen in June. So no plan for regional recommendations in Asia and Pacific. So thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Afsane. Then Jeff for the Pacific community. And then I see one more hand. That will be the last one. I think after that we will probably close this session so we can still enjoy a short break. So Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At SPC, the Pacific community, we provide significant levels of support depending on country needs. So we use the principles and recommendations document as a base, and then we also provide more tailored advice and documentation to the 26 countries and territories in the Pacific, down to the level that it can include providing code that can be used in countries. We provide in-country training for statistical staff and enumerators, etc. And in some cases, we actually assist with the census itself. We also provide technology backup and support, including storage of the data that's collected in some countries. It must be remembered some countries in the Pacific are very small, 2,000 people, for example, as a country, as well as the larger countries as well. So we provide quite a range of support. We have a whole team dedicated to this work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And then the last hand that's I saw raised is from Lalita Sohai. So Lalita, I don't know from where you're joining.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yes, I'm from the CARICOM Secretariat, the Caribbean community. We have 15 member states and 5 associate members. And I guess as time goes by, you will learn about my region. Time is against us. So just to say that CARICOM, which we have a sub-program, regional statistics program, which I am a part of, we coordinate the censuses in the countries. We lend support on, well, technical support, of course, with funding, available funding, not our funding, but international development partners. But just to say, what I really raise my hand to say is that we do have every census, every round of census, we have a core and a set of questions that are recommended for the countries. And of course, it's in collaboration with all the countries. So in terms of standardization and harmonization, we do use the principles and recommendations UN as a base, and we would use that and also include specific definitions that are specific to us, like for example, union status. We have visiting partners and that kind of thing. So yes, just to say that we coordinate the censuses in our countries in the region. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Larita. It was great to hear from different regions. On this, I think I have to close the session. Thank you a lot again for everyone who has contributed in any ways. To UNSD for sure, but also to everyone who provided input through the survey.
Olivier, before you conclude, may we give the opportunity to Sabrina from the UNFPA Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean.
Oh, it's good to see Sabrina there. Hi, Sabrina.
Okay.
So Sefe, you take responsibility for shortening the break, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I can be super quick. I just wanted to take the opportunity to greet you all. I missed the first two meetings because I was on mission for the census in Costa Rica. No, I just wanted to share, and I can share that via email as well, of course, later with you, with the organizers, that a couple of things. So first of all, what we did in Latin America and the Caribbean, something similar to the ICCC, the International Committee on Census Coordinations. We have a regional census coordination that we work very, very closely in each census undertaking together with ECLAC, specifically with CELADE. We have developed several guidance, all in line with the handbook on management, in line with the principles and recommendations, but some that are a little bit more focused on how to specifically develop census plans, how to prepare analysis plans, how to promote the widespread use of data. So all of those information, there are some 10 guidance notes or so that we developed that we can share with all of you as well. Currently, we're working on a guidance on more of an integral package on census evaluation. We're seeing some higher than expected census omissions, and we want to see what are some of the components that we need to work on in order really to have an integral approach to all of that. I think what is very important for Latin America and the Caribbean, we heard from our CARICOM colleagues already also on the questionnaires, but it's the issue, of course, of statistical visibility of some population groups, Afro-descendant population groups, indigenous population groups, and the issue of auto-identification on ethnicity. So that is an issue, of course, that is very important in our region. And I think overall, the integration of the principle of leaving no one behind throughout the entire census process, but then also in really in using the data in order to make sure that we have those information available for our SDGs, but obviously also for our regional agendas and in our national development plans. I'll share all of that with you via email, I assume, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to greet you. Thank you for the invitation and say that it's very nice to be connected to all of you.
Thanks, Sabrina. Great to see you. I'm sure all this guidance and expertise that comes from regions will be properly reflected and referred to in the PNR, since we have representative from all regions, I think, in this expert group. So all that great. So once again, for the second time, I will say thank you to everyone. I will, turn the baton back to UNSD Sefe to decide if and how long you want the break to be before the next session. So thank you.
Thank you, Olivier, for ably sharing the session on the structure, design, and format of the PNR for the 2030 round. Let's take a 15 minutes break and reconvene. Right now, it's 10 a.m. New York time, so let's reconvene at 10:15 New York time, 15 minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, dear colleagues, I hope you had the chance to stretch your legs. We are ready to move to the last session of our expert group meeting. Unfortunately, I like to add, because this is the moment where there is always this bittersweet feeling. On one end, I'm sure that you are as happy as me in knowing that we have achieved a lot over just 3 mornings. So we should be really proud of the work that we have done collectively so far. But on the other hand, it's also the time to wrap up and see where we stand as we shape and we agree on the next steps. So having said that, UNSD has prepared a few slides just to guide us as we review the progress made so far and some of the agreements that were made over the last 3 days. Seifi, if you can bring us up to speed with the summary of discussions and decisions, and then I will open the floor for you to provide some feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. So we try to summarize some of the key points that were raised during the presentations and the discussions, and try to summarize them in a few points on these slides. So feel free to comment and so that we can improve these conclusion points and also the agreements on how to proceed with the revision process. One of the conclusions for this meeting would be that the expert group meeting recognized the importance of revising the principles and recommendations for the 2030 round based on the diverse experience in census taking documented thus far in the 2020 round of censuses, including the major challenges observed, lessons learned, as well as innovations and good practices that have been achieved in the 2020 round. The expert group identified the following themes as areas that require the provision of guidance or substantial revision or elaboration in the fourth revision of the PNR for the 2030 round. And I'll go through some of the key points that through the presentations and the discussions that came out as being some of the areas in which the next version of the PNR will contain substantial elaboration and guidance. One of the themes or areas for more elaboration and guidance that the expert group agreed to includes elaboration and guidance on contingency planning for responding to and managing emergencies and crises, such as those that we encountered during the COVID-19 pandemic. Another area is for elaboration and for guidance is effective risk management through early identification and including through the establishment of risk registers. Another area is the use of administrative data in various aspects of census taking, and also guidance on approaches for the gradual transition to register-based censuses. Another area is methods for estimating populations in areas of a country where enumeration is not possible, perhaps due to conflicts. Another area requiring elaboration and guidance is strategies for improving the coverage of hard to enumerate groups such as nomads, indigenous population groups, and the homeless. Another area is requiring elaboration and guidance. Methods for assessing the quality of census data, including for census data produced from administrative registers. We heard that the PES is not possible in many cases when census data is compiled from administrative registers. What alternative methods exist for assessing the quality of data coming from administrative registers. There is also a lot of discussion on guidance on how to adjust census results and also how to communicate census results and the quality of census results. Another area identified for elaboration and the provision of guidance is on the use of innovative technologies, including artificial intelligence, machine learning, in order to enhance the accuracy and efficiency of data collection and processing. Another area is the use of geospatial information in the planning and implementation of a census operation. Communication strategies for conveying census results and also for communicating results of quality assessments was also another area identified for further elaboration and the provision of guidance. Communication strategies for combating misinformation, negative messaging coming from social media, for example, and for improving the coverage of hard-to-reach groups was also another area that was highlighted a few times during these 3 days. That requires elaboration and guidance in the next version of the PNR. Approaches for multimode data collection is also another area. The real-time monitoring and management of field-based data collection was also another area. Methods for safeguarding data privacy and security. Dissemination of census data through innovative products and services, including grid-based outputs. Geocoded census data is also another area. Last but not least, the use of census data in disaster prevention in humanitarian settings and for environmental statistics, as well as for monitoring the SDGs was also another area that will require elaboration in the next version of the PNR. A few other points that we can highlight include the expert group meeting agreed that for any new population housing topic considered for inclusion in the list of the recommended topics, there should be sufficient documentation that the topic is feasible for collection in a census and not suitable. I mean, for example, maybe that topic could be suitable for collection in a household survey versus a census. And also in terms of whether or not that topic can be operationalized in a census context, and also that it meets national priorities. Another conclusion is the expert group agreed that the fourth revision of the PNR will focus on offering global and high-level recommendations, considering the diverse regional context, as well as the diversity in the level of statistical capacity across nations. Elaborations on specific aspects of census taking that are deemed to be too detailed or too technical to fit in the PNR will be made available in other UNSD handbooks, guidelines, and technical reports. Another conclusion is that the expert group meeting encouraged UNSD to offer a digital version of the next version of the PNR, considering design principles that allow interactivity, for example, hyperlinks for ease of navigation, as well as for ease of access to reference documents and other materials, and also design principles that facilitate accessibility. For example, the need for designing the electronic version of the publication so that it can be accessed by persons with disabilities. When it comes to the organization of the work of the revision, the expert group approved the following 7 task teams to carry out the work of revising the PNR. Task team 1 will focus on census planning, organizing, and management. Task team 2 will focus on census methodologies and the use of administrative data, including population concepts and definitions. Task team 3 will focus on the use of geospatial information in census operations. Task team 4 will focus on quality assurance, quality indicators, and assessment of census data. Task team 5 will focus on data collection and processing, which includes the use of electronic data collection technologies, as well as multi-mode data collection approaches. Task Team 6 will focus on communication, dissemination, and utilization. And last but not least, Task Team 7 will focus on recommended population and housing topics. When it comes to also how we organize the work of the revision, it was agreed that UNSD will ensure coordination among the various task teams through its role as the secretariat for the revision of the PNR. UNSD will convene meetings of chairs of task teams whenever there is a need for it and whenever there are overlapping interests. Also, efforts will be made to ensure that there is consistency between the global recommendations contained in the PNR and regional recommendations that are being developed. For example, the EC is currently in the process of revising its recommendations, and also any future regional recommendations that might be developed by other UN regional commissions, such as the ECA, ECLAC, and also ESQA and ESCAP. We have now agreed to 7 task teams, and using the information that you have provided, when you completed your participation form, you indicated your interest in the areas in which you would like to contribute towards the revision. Also, you provided information on your current responsibilities. So taking those 2 pieces of information, we have made a tentative assignment of countries and institutions into the various task teams. This is a suggestion from UNSD. If you agree with the assignment, that would be great. But if you have a different opinion, perhaps you would rather serve in a different task team, we're happy to entertain your requests. We'll be happy to accommodate you. And also for those that might be interested in serving in more than task teams, also reach out to us and we'll be happy to include you, involve you in the work of the revision in more than 1 task teams. So we're not opening this for discussion at this point, but in the coming days, we'd be happy to exchange emails with you to make sure that you are happy with the assignment. And if not, we'll try to accommodate your interests. Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you very much, Seifi, and I hope that this is a fair summary of the discussions that we had over the last 3 days and also of the decisions that were made by the expert group. So Seifi, you said maybe no comment specifically on this table, because otherwise we are going to spend the next 20 minutes listening to where you prefer to be moved. So that discussion will happen in the next few days. We will reach out to you, so don't be afraid. We will, by all means, try to match your interests, and you will let us know where you think you can better contribute. On the other hand, I'd like to open the floor for any comments specifically on the first 3-4 slides. And I acknowledge Mitali. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you. That was a really good summary of all that transpired in 3 days. I'm sure that was not easy to put together, Seifi and Francesca. My only question was about how the work on the task teams would proceed. I see the dates on the agenda. I think in the past, the UN PNR in the past, somebody actually drafted one version and then people, the expert group, came together and went chapter by chapter, section by section, commenting on it. I think the flow is going to be different this time, it seems like. So my question is, who is going to actually be writing the chapters?
Thank you, Mitali. Very important questions. Hold on, let's see if there is anybody else. Then Seifi, you got the floor back. Any other need for clarifications or points that you would like to be reflected in the conclusions? You will receive also the slides, by the way. Olivier?
Yeah, it's just a practical question. I see my name in 2 task force. I'm very happy with what you suggest. But I'm from the World Bank, which is an organization of about 18,000 people. I'm not the I don't have a monopoly on census expertise, and I have colleagues who are actually much more qualified than me in some areas, which are not the areas for which I've been assigned to the task team. So, for example, at the World Bank, the Survey Solutions team would be very happy to contribute, to a task team that I would not be part of. So, what would be the mechanism to provide not my comments, but comment from my colleagues to a task team that I'm not part of?
Thank you. Also, very valid question that we will reply immediately after. Anybody else? I don't see any other hands. So maybe, Seifi, do you want to
Sure.
address the 2 questions? Thank you.
Okay. The first question from Italy regarding who is going to be doing the actual drafting. So the first go will be by the task teams. So the task teams, they have areas that have been identified for them to work on. So for those areas, they are in charge of drafting new text or revising existing text. So the task teams will be in charge of, through the chair, who will coordinate the work of the task team. Each task team will be responsible for the first round of revision. And then once the task teams submit their work to the Secretariat, to UNSD, we will compile all the pieces coming from the various task teams. We'll try our best to harmonize them, organize them, structure them to the extent possible, because there will be different styles of writing. So we'll try our best to harmonize before we convene for the second EGM. So the first attempt will be by the various task teams, and then in the second stage, UNSD will go through it. We'll try to edit, harmonize, restructure, submit that to the second expert group meeting, and then the subsequent revisions. The first opportunity will be for the task teams. And then once the task teams, after the second round of revision, submit their work, then UNSD will take over, and then it will harmonize, edit, format as appropriate. So that's how we will proceed. Regarding the question from Olivier, World Bank, if you want to join other groups, of course, as I already indicated, we are happy to accommodate that. But even if you're not joining a task team, but your institution has rich information in that regard, or colleagues that can contribute, we're happy to include people into the task teams, not into the expert group, but into the task team. So we'll be happy to accept contributions from individual members of your colleagues from your institution. That's one way. And the second way for you to contribute is to submit documentation. We'll be very happy to receive input in the form of documents, materials, that can help us in the revision process, that can serve as input, textual input for the various areas of work. So we plan to establish a platform where we can exchange documents, shared folders, so where people, okay, maybe you are working on geospatial, but you have a very good document on a quality framework. So you can submit that quality framework either to us by email, or you can directly put it in a folder, in a shared folder, where the task team working on quality can look at it. And if there is some good information, good material that can inform the revision process, they can use it. So definitely encourage your colleagues in your institutions working in areas other than you specialize in, so that we can also have their input. Thank you.
Thank you, Seifi. And given that I don't see anybody else who wishes to get the floor, could you also say maybe a few words on what the experts should expect over the next weeks? And knowing that we don't have so much time up to the next in-person expert group meeting that is planned as of now for November 2023, that would be a great opportunity for us to really be in the same room and work in person on this important output. So maybe a few words on what's going to happen in the next few weeks.
Okay, so our immediate task is to make sure everyone in this expert group is happy where they are assigned in terms of assignment to task teams. So over the next week, we'll be reaching out to you to make sure you're happy where we have assigned you. If not, we'll be happy to accommodate your interest. So hopefully by the end of next week, we'll finalize the composition of the task teams. And then after that, we will be selecting a chair for each task team. And then it will be the chair who will organize the work of the task team. Of course, UNSD as the secretariat will serve as the secretary. One UNSD staff will always be a member of each task team, and that UNSD staff will serve as the secretary for that task team. And then in collaboration with the chair, each task team will develop its work plan, its own timeline, deliverables. They will also, in the concept note, we have provided some pointers on the scope of work, but the task team, once they have the task team is established, has its chair, they can discuss and elaborate further on the scope of work. Probably that's the first task they would do. And then they would allocate responsibilities for revising or drafting new text. And that's how it will proceed. So we have approximately from June up to probably end of October for the first round of activity by the task teams. Hopefully by the end of October, we will receive revised text in the area in which a task team is working on. And then at that point, UNSD will compile everything. We'll try to edit the document to the extent possible, harmonize the text across the different chapters, parts of the PNR, and then we'll convene for the second expert group meeting. At the second expert group meeting, we will have a face-to-face meeting. We will have a draft before us. We'll go through the document as a group. We'll review the document. And then, of course, we will solicit your views on additional guidance for improving the document in terms of structure, in terms of content, in terms of the quality of the content. And then we go to the second round of revision. I think for the near future, I think that's probably enough for now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Seifi. And yes, so you will hear from us very soon. Seifi pointed out already by the end of next week. So please keep checking your emails because UNSD will be after you. So if there is nobody else who would like to contribute to this last session, I think we are ready to close. We are doing well in time, so maybe we can even conclude the meeting a few minutes in advance. From my side, I don't have much to add, apart from saying a huge thank to all of you. I think you are an impressive group, very solid group. I personally learned a lot. I was just observing, I didn't contribute. But I was really taking good notes about all your experiences, about the many perspectives that you brought at the table, that you brought to the meeting. I think that as a group, collectively, we will really shape the next revision of the PNRs to make this product relevant for all countries in the world. So again, a big, huge thank you. Of course, the task ahead is challenging, and on one side, I'm a little concerned, particularly because the resources that we have in-house are limited. And on that point, we may need to get back to you, or to some of you, our sister agencies in particular, to see if we can join forces and pull together some additional financial resources as we move towards a product that is also available online, it is interactive, etc. All the important points that were made this morning. But apart from that, the challenge ahead is also due to the fact that we don't have too much time. We are looking at a window of a year and a half, 18 months more or less, and we'll have 7 groups working well. And I feel in between the lines, all of you were pointing out that, you know, what the structure behind, how do we coordinate, how do we make sure that these 7 parallel groups are really moving towards the same direction, they are converging towards the same product. So for that, again, there is the challenge, but I believe that we can also agree that the group is solid, and by working together, we will achieve our common goal. And the PNRs at the global level will really be shaped as a key overarching framework, providing overall guidance for the census undertaking in the 2030 for all countries. So this is also an opportunity for me to thank my colleagues in UNSD, in particular Seifi and Miriam, but also Andrew and Andrea that you didn't see, but they were all the time with us on the back. And again, a big thank you to all of you. This is just the beginning of the journey. We will become best friends over the next 18 months because we will be working very closely together. Thank you again. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.